back to the www.plaidavenger.com, where we just don't want to hear the news. We want to understand that news. And finally, let's wrap up our four-part series on liberating Libya. Let's entitle this one, Liberating Libya Part 4, Some Unanswered Questions. And these are questions that have come up along the way of the other 3 Plaidcasts on what's going on in Libya. They didn't really deserve a whole Plaidcast onto themselves, so I'm just going to answer some Plaid viewer questions from you concerning what's happening in Libya right this second. A question that came up a lot ever since we posted the Beleaguered Arab League Plaidcast is, why did the Arab League vote to basically have the outside world go in and take out one of their own? In other words, why did the Arab League, the Arab leaders, vote to support the outside world overthrowing Arab Libya and the Arab leader Muammar Gaddafi? Again, they voted against one of their brothers in arms, literally. This is an easy one. Because they hate him. You thought the outside world hated Muammar Gaddafi. Yeah, I mean, they do. The outside world mostly thought Gaddafi for the last 40 years has been a dictator, has sponsored state terrorism, which he openly has, tried to get a nuclear weapon, which he openly has for a long time. He has since renounced a lot of those bad traits and was trying to be a good boy for the last 10 years, but too little too late. The outside world never really trusted them that much. And when he promised to basically slaughter his whole population in order to keep power, the outside world said, okay, we'll go in and get him. No one really likes him that much. Anywho. But why did the Arab League vote for it? Because they hate him just as much. That's kind of a little known fact. I think a lot of the outside world doesn't understand that. Because they're like, well, Muammar Gaddafi's is an Arab and Libya is an Arab state. Why would the Arab League vote against an Arab peoples? They hate him for all the same reasons, by the way. The outside world hates him. When he came to power, Muammar Gaddafi was really pushing pan-Arabism. He wanted the whole Arab world to get together in one big Arab state and control a bunch of oil and be a world power. And that just never worked out. The other Arab leaders never really dug that vision of his. And he, in return, started to really hate them because he thinks all these other Arab leaders are stooges or puppets you know, basically kissing the ass of the United States, especially the Saudis. Muammar's always hated the Saudis and said they're selling their oil too cheap just to kiss up to the United States. And so that created a lot of animosity between other Arab leaders and him and his more extremist version and vision of what the Arab Middle East should be. So the Hood never really liked him much either. In fact, they never really liked him at all. They saw his trying to get nuclear weapons as a threat to them as well. They see Muammar Gaddafi's terrorism enacted on themselves as well. There was a plot uncovered that Muammar Gaddafi was funding to an assassination plot against King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. What? Yeah, the ties were direct. They're like, holy cow, he was funding this. And he's again, because he hates the Saudis, and the Saudis really hate him because of that. So you might think, oh, well, maybe some other more radical elements who are also counted as terrorists in the Middle East might like him. I don't know, like Hezbollah, that Shia group that lots of Team West considers a terrorist group in Lebanon. No, Hezbollah hates his guts too. They're not even Shia, or they're not even Sunni. They're Shia Islam, and they're considered aligned with Iran, but they hate Muammar because a very important Shia cleric actually went to Libya years back and mysteriously disappeared, and everybody thinks that Muammar had something to do with that too. So he really had no friends at all in the Hood. You know what? And sometimes it's good to have a friend, because he didn't, and when all this mess went down, everybody said, yeah, go ahead and invade Libya. We hate them anyway. I should say we hate Muammar anyway, not the Libyan people. It's important to note that because the situation in Libya that prompted this international invasion, that situation is going on in other countries, but they didn't get invaded. They're not getting liberated. I'm speaking specifically of Yemen and Bahrain, and maybe even Syria. These are countries that all now have active revolutionary movement in the streets, and unarmed civilians are being shot every day, and it's been going on for a month or 2 months in some cases when you look at Yemen. How come they ain't getting liberated? Well, because the Arab League don't hate them as much, don't hate those Arab leaders as much as they hated Muammar, and no one in the outside world has a vested interest in Libya, whereas the United States has a vested interest in Bahrain, where the U.S. Fifth Fleet is located, and in Yemen, where covert CIA operations are propping up the Yemeni government because the Yemeni government has been fighting Al-Qaeda and other terrorist elements within Yemen. Is this starting to make sense? That's why the Arab League turned its back on its Arab brother, Muammar Gaddafi. They never liked his ass anyway. They've hated him for decades. So that's the dealio there. The next question a lot of folks ask is, why did France and Great Britain and the U.S. get involved, leading the charge into this Libyan liberation? And by the way, and why aren't they doing anything about all these other countries? Well, I've already alluded to that. They have vested interest, at least the United States does, in these other countries, and the Arab League does not want to see its brothers and fellow monarchs in these other countries fall. So nothing's going to happen. There's not going to be any international nothing in Bahrain or Yemen or perhaps anywhere else. Libya, though, all the stars aligned for it to happen there. But why was it the British and French leading the charge on this? Who knows? I mean, somebody slipped the French like a triple dose of Wheaties several months ago, because these guys, they didn't just grow an iron spine all of a sudden. They grew an Iron Man exterior exoskeleton to match, because these guys have been more hawkish and have been fighting more and shooting more and killing more than they have in the last 3 months than they have for the last 300 years. And I'm including Lafayette in this, all right? They have been proactive everything about Libya. And that begs the question, why? Why was it the French and the British who were raging about doing something? They're the ones that pushed the whole UN resolution to begin with. They're the ones that basically begged, pleaded, and cajoled and dragged Uncle Sam into this, kicking and screaming, by the way. The United States did not want to get involved in this, but the French and British basically guilted them and pulled them into this. Why? I got to think, and again, we're talking hypotheticals here. We're trying to open a discussion and thought process. Why would it have happened this way? And I don't know all the backroom deals, but I can tell you this. One of the things for sure that was the cause of the British and French leading the charge is immigration. What? What about immigration? Yeah. Immigration has become a gigantic issue across Western Europe. I should just say the European Union. Immigration from outside the European Union zone into EU has become a flashpoint in country after country after country. We've talked about this in other Plaidcasts, but many European states, the Finns, the French, the Brits, the Italians, feel like they're losing their culture to too much immigration from other lands, particularly North Africa. They feel like that those immigrants are taking their jobs and taking their benefits, much the same kind of spiel you hear in the United States. But really, it's a true fear that they're losing their Italianness and losing their Finnishness to the inflow of immigrants from other parts of the planet. And you're seeing this manifest itself in the election of conservative parties to right-wing parties to ultra-nationalist parties all across Europe. Now, I'm not just picking on the French and the British, but they have two of the biggest militaries and they're very proactive. And so I think they led the charge. Now, again, how is that related? Why? What? So what? They're worried about immigration in Europe. What's that got to do with them trying to get involved in Libya? I truly believe that the French in particular, but also the British, thought that, hey, we have to get Libya settled down as quickly as possible. Why? Because ever since the Arab revolutions have started, and I'm talking Tunisia to Egypt and now everywhere else, there's been a mass flow of refugees/immigrants from North Africa to, right across the Mediterranean, to stable, rich, prosperous EU countries. That's just a fact. Italy has been inundated with tens of thousands of Tunisians and Egyptians. And ever since the Libyan debacle has started, Libyans are fleeing. Because what the hell wants to live in a war zone or a revolutionary zone? I don't blame them. I'd get the hell out of Dodge too. So rightfully, I believe, the Europeans are saying, holy crap, the best way to stop this flow of refugees/immigrants is to try to stabilize Libya as quickly as possible. And again, we're going to do a whole podcast on this because the Finns just voted in an ultra-conservative party as well that wants to stop immigration. So this is not just a French thing. It's a European-wide thing that's affecting lots of different things. So but get back to this point. So the British and French want to be proactive and get into Libya to calm it down, to perhaps protect civilians and stop a war or overthrow Gaddafi, to settle things out so that people won't leave Libya? Well, that didn't work. I mean, which brings me to kind of a third question that's not really a question, but people have asked, what the hell was everybody thinking of? Why on earth did the world get involved in this so quickly? And I think the answer to that is, I truly also believe, again, another Plaid Avenger hypothesis, that the U.S., France, the UK, that the UN in general, that NATO leadership, I think that everyone in the world truly believed that this was going to be a 48-hour affair. That as this tension was building up and people were protesting in Libya, and everybody hates Gaddafi. I've already told you this. Everybody hates Gaddafi. Everybody outside Libya hates Gaddafi. Everybody in the Libya hates Gaddafi. And the world watched as people started protesting, so everybody assumed, well, everybody in Libya also hates Gaddafi. Everybody hates Gaddafi. Let's start a TV show and make a lot of money off that. So this will be easy. We'll just send in a bunch of international troops. The rebels are already in place. Everybody hates Gaddafi. Roll film. It'll still take 48 hours. It'll be like the United States invading Iraq. Everybody hates Saddam Hussein. The whole military is going to collapse in 2 days, and kablamo, we'll all celebrate in the streets of Tripoli 48 hours from now. And that was, of course, dead ass totally wrong. But I truly believe that's what everybody thought. That's why they were quick to jump into this, to pass that UN resolution. And I do believe that Team West and the major players here thought, okay, here's what's going to happen. We'll go to the UN and we'll say that we're going to protect civilians, and that's how they passed Resolution 1973 to go protect Libyan civilians from the dictator. And then very quickly they said, okay, as soon as we get in there and establish a no-fly zone, then we'll do everything we can to make sure that the regime gets overthrown. And that's two different missions, okay? So protecting civilians is entirely different from going in and saying, oh, we're going to overthrow this leader and overthrow this government. They morphed those two things very quickly, and they found out, oh, by the way, that's not going to happen in 48 hours because Muammar's army and Muammar fought back. And right this second, here on April 17th, it goes back and forth every day. There's now speculative talk that Libya will be separated. It'll be a two-state solution. What? Nobody thought that a month ago. Everybody thought it was going to be 2 days, not 2 states. You see how crazy this has gotten? And maybe Muammar's going to win. Maybe eventually Muammar's going to lose. But I do want you to know this. Both the Arab League and NATO, of course, is in charge of the operations in liberating Libya at this second. Both of these entities, the Arab League and NATO, have vowed publicly that we will not stop. We will support the rebels to the bitter end. In other words, we are here for the long haul. We are not going to stop fighting and we're not going to stop supporting the rebels until Muammar Gaddafi is gone. The Arab League and NATO have both said it, which locks them in, and this is a protracted war now. He has to go, or you're going to have divide Libya into 2 states. And again, nobody saw that coming. But let's get to another question. Who is supporting this dealio? Well, as we already suggested or talked about, NATO is now in command superstructure. France and the UK are doing most of the heavy lifting. In fact, all the heavy lifting. The United States went in and did the heavy lifting for the first week and bombed the hell out of Muammar's tanks and bombed the hell out of their ground defenses. The French went in and bombed the hell out of their Air Force. And so ever since that, the United States helped establish a no-fly zone, and the U.S. has backed up and said, we're out. NATO's in charge of this, not us. We got a full plate already. The U.S. is there for support only. So there's subs and ships and other stuff in the Mediterranean. The U.S. is, I'm sure, running supplies and possibly guns soon. But they're not fighting. The British and the French are the ones with flying the sorties and bombing stuff and doing things. And NATO is in command of the whole superstructure. By the way, side note, speaking of French eating their triple bowl of Wheaties, the French actually want to do more. The French are now talking about sending in French ground troops. Where the hell were they in World War II? Completely crazy. But the French have been wildly proactive. And again, I can't help but think it's got something to do with settling out this situation to stop immigration. Lots of other folks, of course, think the French are trying to be at some sort of 21st century neo-imperialism, that the French are coming in to take Libyan oil. Hell, I don't know. I ain't French or Libyan. That one seems like a bit of a stretch to me, but hey, people are going to believe what they're going to believe. Next question. Who does not support this? Who does not support this? And that's very important because it's the BRICS. What? Who? The BRIC house. That's right. The BRIC countries, the B-R-I-C, and actually they just added an S. The BRICS is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, and China. This group of, they call them emerging economies. I don't even know what that means anymore because China is the second biggest economy on planet Earth. How much more can it emerge? But they are, I used to call them the second string, the second tier economies that are very quickly getting to the first string, if not on the first string already. And economically, they've been working together just for a few years. But here's what the Plaid Avenger finds fascinating. They have increasingly been talking with a singular, not just economic voice, but with a single diplomatic voice and a single political voice. In other words, they've been getting together on a host of issues that just isn't about trade, even though they do mostly that a lot as well. And that's very interesting. It's fascinating. We pointed this out 3 episodes ago. The BRICS all abstained from voting even on the UN resolution. The BRIC countries said from the get-go, we're not keen on this whole affair. We don't think much of this protecting civilians in Libya, but they said, hey, we don't want to be accused of letting a bloodbath ensue if Muammar does that. So they abstained from the vote. They did not support it. They did not veto it. They didn't vote no. They just said, okay, we're going to sit on the bench on this one. You guys do it if the whole world wants to do it. Now that it's actually happened and it's turned into, I won't call it a debacle, but it's been a month of mayhem that no one thought was going to last a month. Ever since this is now devolved, the BRIC countries, and now they've been joined by an S, which is South Africa. The BRICS countries just had a meeting in southern China last week, wherein they talked about economics and working together and this and that and the other, and then jointly said, and we, the BRICS, disapprove of what's happening in Libya. Whammo! That is really important. It's really important. You see, I'm getting my plaid panties in a bunch. It's that important. It's a very, very big deal. What? What are you talking about, Plaid Avenger? Why would that be such a big deal? Here's why, and here's what we're going to finish with. The question that lots of people have asked me. What is going to be the end game on this? What's going to be the result of this Libyan intervention, this Libyan liberation that we've done this 4-part series on? Well, who knows? I would be a fool to predict too much concretely. That's not what we're here for. One of several things is what's going to happen in Libya. Muammar Gaddafi will die and or go away. Muammar Gaddafi will win and reassume control over all of Libya. Or Libya will be split into two. It's one of those three things. It has to happen eventually. Now, yeah, come back in like a month or 2 years or 10 years and be like, yeah, you were right. Eventually. I don't know when it's going to happen. But those are the only real three options. And I don't know which one. And quite frankly, it's not important to speculate about that this early, but here is what's really important that I can say. The real end game that's important for the globe on this mess is two things. The real impacts of the rest of the planet we need to concern ourselves with this liberating Libya stuff is that, one, the modern definition of sovereignty is dead. It is dead, dead, dead as a damn doornail. The last nail is in the coffin of modern sovereignty. What do I mean by that? I'm not going to get into a whole sovereignty lecture here, but we've been living for the last 60 years under this concept that we all sit at the UN and we all recognize each other. Hey, China, we recognize your territory and your right to rule your territory. And China, you recognize Zimbabwe's territory and the right for them to do their things in their territory. And Zimbabwe recognizes Mexico. We all recognize each other, and we all recognize that the government of that geographic entity has the ultimate power over that geographic entity, and no one else has the power to do anything in that geographic entity unless that geographic entity messes with somebody else. Like, no one would have messed with Saddam Hussein until he invaded Kuwait. Then you broke the rules, because Kuwait's a sovereign state too, so now the world has to go in and protect sovereignty. Or if you commit a genocide, no, that's bad. Now the world has to come in and stop a genocide, so that will undo sovereignty as well. But this thing in Libya is brand new. It's kind of been happening. The whole Afghanistan thing was murky. The U.S. invasion of Iraq is a little murky. But the argument could still be made that, yes, sovereignty is still kind of the way that it's been for 60 years. Nuh-uh, not now. It's done now. You got no excuse now. Muammar Gaddafi may have been a bastard. He is a bastard. But he did not invade another country. And he was not conducting a genocide. He wasn't doing nothing. In fact, he wasn't even hurting his people very much at the time. And it was only the idea that he might hurt his people because of this revolutionary activity. And the world then decided that we're going to preempt your sovereignty. Libya is no longer sovereign. That opens up a whole can of worms that who knows how that's going to end. And we talked about this stuff already, so I'll stop belaboring the point now. But what country would be next? I think we're starting to go, basically what this does is change the world's concept of what's legitimate to invade a sovereign state. It used to be that, if you invade another country, that's bad, we'll mess with you. If you commit genocide, that's bad, we'll mess with you. And now it's just, if you're a bad leader. If you're just a bad leader, we may mess with you. And you're like, okay. Whoa, well, pull out your list on that one. What country's getting invaded next? So it's a very big deal for international policy, for diplomacy, for world power structures. This changes a lot. It changes a lot because we're kind of getting back to old school theory that, who's really got sovereignty? You know who really has sovereignty? Of the countries that can defend their sovereignty. And only if you could truly defend it do you truly have it. No one's invading the United States because if they do, the United States will kick them out. They can prove their sovereignty. So you either have to have the force to prove it or have a very good friend who can help you prove it if cases unfold that you need them. Namely, North Korea is a terrible place. Terrible, terrible leadership. They should have been invaded long before Muammar Gaddafi's Libya, but China will protect them. So you either can protect yourself, like China can protect its own sovereignty, but it will also protect North Korea. So no one's invading North Korea either. There can be no UN resolution against North Korea to invade them. See how that works? That's the kind of realpolitik, new definition of sovereignty that's starting to unfold here in the 21st century. The second point gets back to the BRICS. And the second point of what's really the end game here for this Libya liberation. Second point is that I believe we're starting to see a bipolar world. And bipolar don't mean I'm crazy. No, I'm sane. No, I'm crazy. Not that type of bipolar, but a two-power world. The United States now for several decades has been the sole superpower. It's been a unipolar world, one power world. And a lot of folks have speculated that, oh, we're now going to evolve into a multi-pole world, a multi-power world where the U.S. is powerful, but China's now powerful, and India's getting powerful, and the EU's powerful. That still could be the case. But this particular scenario, I think you're starting to see two major powers start to emerge. And a lot of people are starting to compare it to the Cold War. I think that's a little cheesy and a little dicey. But the two powers I'm speaking of are Team West. Team West is the team that pushed for the whole Libya liberation thing. And that, of course, is the United States, Western Europe, Australia, Japan. The same kind of Team West, the same kind of side was in the Cold War facing off against the commies. That structure and that team is still in place. But the emerging single entity that's coming to counter it, not to fight Team West, but to counter its influence, is the BRICS. I can't help it. I get all excited about it because the BRICS, they hold a lot of economic clout, and they've only been around for a few years, and they're already starting to speak with a single political voice too. And it's a political voice that is not diametrically opposed to Team West, but it's different. The BRICS did not vote for this Libya liberation thing. And they're out there saying, we have a different vision for the world. Again, I'm not suggesting that the BRICS countries are now going to face off against Team West in a new Cold War and we're all going to fight each other and die. It can't come to that because it's not that it's a conflict, two teams in a conflict. It's two teams that have two different visions of what the world should be, and they're going to pursue their agendas. And yes, their agendas are going to come into conflict from time to time, but not open conflict. Team West is not going to fight the BRICS because India and Brazil are in the BRICS, and both of those are allies of the United States and the West. I'm saying it's two different teams with two different agendas of how the world should be. And you're going to see countries, I think, just like in the Cold War, start to line up behind one of these two major thematic powers. Isn't that exciting stuff? I could be wrong. It's just a projection. But I think the BRICS stuff is fascinating enough to take another look at it. Let's do that for our next podcast. What do you think? You want the BRICS for the next podcast, or would you like what's going on in Europe with the move to the right, which I've done podcast on before, but it's getting really hot right now. Finland just did a big vote, and this conservative party has come to power, and they may renegotiate EU treaties on policies concerning bailing out Portugal and Spain and these other countries. So it's exciting times for this move towards the right in Europe, but it's also exciting times with this rise of the BRICS countries. So what do you think? I don't know. Dial it in, vote for it, leave a comment, tell me what podcast you want next. But for now, and for Libya, thank goodness, after a four-parter, we are done, and I'm out.